Okay, and we are live. This is Masculine Geek, episode number 11. Thank you for joining us. And we have the normal crew here, and also the addition of Tim, who I believe joined us in episode 2. Is that correct, Tim? Was it 2 or 3? Earth to Tim.
Sometime around 2 or 3. It was an earlier episode.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's what I thought. And we're here to talk about music through the ages, some random geekery, and as always, a show and tell. So let's get started. Rob, do you want? Well, we always do this. Rob, what are you smoking?
I am smoking tonight a Perdomo. Shit. The label
Perdomo
for
shit.
Yeah, it is shit. No, it's actually pretty good. It's a Perdomo Lot 23. It was one that I got as a giveaway when I went to a cigar show, convention, whatever you want to call it. And it was one of the things I won in addition to my Perdomo swag here, my ashtray.
Oh, cool.
And so it's the first time I've ever smoked this one. It's more robust than the Perdomo Habano Maduro that I had last time, and the last couple times, actually. It's a little more robust. It's a little thicker as far as the flavor goes. It's a little more bold. I definitely like it, that I think I would buy another one of these or buy more of them. But that's pretty much what I'm smoking tonight.
Okay, so that's your post-supper cigar.
Mm-hmm.
Excellent. And TJ, you have something interesting that arrived in the mail, and then something you found.
Yeah, so I just got this. This is we call it the the Gandalf pipe, which I really love. I highly recommend if you enjoy pipe tobacco. This is it's great because it's not putting any pressure on your teeth, and you can hold it like this, you can hold it like that, and it's just a really easy. You don't have to do a lot of lights. And then this is a small little clay pipe. I haven't really used it much. The nice thing about clay pipes as opposed to wood pipes is that they're really easy. They don't, everything comes off inside. So if you look inside this one, there's not a lot of gunk that remains from the tobacco, as opposed to a briar pipe or a corncob pipe, which just builds up over the time. And so I think their longevity is going to be better. This is something that I'll have for hopefully a long time. The other thing that I was doing is, so I showed my quill pen the other week and it had a metal tip like a fountain pen. Well, what I found this time was a kind of a gift I got a couple years ago from a relative. And what it is a quill pen that's an original type. So this would be for writing, and it's got the same nib like a fountain pen, so you would write like with this, and then there's a little ink thing that comes with it. Fill it up with this, put the pen obviously in that, and then it comes with parchment paper like this. So
okay, it sounded awesome. You can put the
Are you coming through? I can't hear you.
A lot of static in the air.
That's what I need when you guys are running off at the mouth. They're just going to crinkle paper. Jesus.
Yeah.
You can write the Masculine Geek
manifesto
on that.
And I was telling
10 Commandments.
That was the 10 Commandments of the Masculine Geeks. I was talking to Vince before the show started about how if you have kids or you're a parent and you want to have fun with your kids, you can use stuff like this to make a little treasure map to help. Say you want to go on a hike and they're not naturally enthusiastic about hiking. You can make a little treasure map and put it somewhere where they find it, and then they get all excited. For kids, you got to help build that imagination, and it's fun. If you're a Masculine Geek, making a treasure map for a kid is fun, right?
You got to do that after you sit down and watch Indiana Jones together.
Yeah. You come up with a little journal, or what's another Treasure Island, right?
Treasure Island, National Treasure.
National Treasure, exactly. So
cool. And Tim, do you have anything interesting that you're working on, or?
Well, I don't smoke, so I can't speak to anything oral fixation wise. But
you're missing out.
Oh, I sure am. But no, the only things I've been working on are just planning some trips coming up in the summer and then later in the fall. and being a guest on other podcasts.
Excellent. Are you working on anything opera-wise? Any background stuff with that?
Possibly. So the two productions that happened, let's see, I think the first one just had its premiere. I wasn't able to do because I was out in Las Vegas for about a week. So I missed some rehearsals. And it seems like for these productions, they're very strict. If you miss at least 2 or 3, and then they just don't even consider you. But Tosca is coming up. That's the final one of the season, and I think I might be able to do that one.
Okay, cool. All right, well, welcome once again. And the main topic of today's episode is essentially music through the ages, maybe how we got started in it as youths. And fundamentally, I think Rob and I are going to do a little talking, but TJ has an interesting love of music from the 30s and 40s, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. So when I was in college, I was I think I was doing some sort of study or research on old time radio. And so I was doing Google searches and looking stuff up. And what I discovered was these old time radio recordings that you could download free because they're public domain. And what I found was collection of Benny Goodman. And my weightlifting instructor in high school, who helped me get into the addiction that I have now for weightlifting, he was really into Benny Goodman, and he knew I played the clarinet in high school. So he was saying, you got to go listen to Benny Goodman. You got to go to the library. You got to get the CDs. You got to listen to him. And I didn't really take him up much on the offer or the suggestion until I was in college, and I started listening to him. And having played the clarinet, I knew how difficult it was to play as well as he did. But I also liked the music because at the time, most of the music that I heard around me was hip hop, and it was very rough and almost dark. That's just how pop music was at the time and all that other stuff. And I'd never heard the kind of big band music that they were playing at the time. It almost took you back into a different, and it does because it came from the 30s, but it took you back into another time where things was a lot calmer, and it just, something seemed to lift up with it. And there was also Duke Ellington. There's Glenn Miller, who did Moonlight Serenade. Moonlight Serenade, in my opinion, is one of the best songs ever written. It's one of the most, just having it in the background at night when you're doing something is really, really just relaxing to have. Who else was there? There was just a lot of big band people. I think there was also in the 30s, Rhapsody in Blues came out. I think that was Gershwin. And so you had all these different songs and artists and musicians. Oh, Cab Calloway, but I think he was actually in 28, 29. If you ever watched Blues Brothers, he's in that film. He does Minnie the Moocher. So I think that just was for the 30s and 40s for me was an apex in many ways for American music, and it was also an apex for American jazz, because after that you started moving towards rock and roll and so on and so forth with that stuff. But I would really recommend, you can see it on YouTube now. YouTube wasn't as big when I was in college, but if you go to YouTube, you can type in Benny Goodman and Glenn Miller. I have some of his World War II recording episodes where he's performing live, and they're giving wartime announcements on the episode on the radio.
Oh, cool!
Yeah, so it's really, for me, it's almost also an education, history education, that I'm understanding the context in which it was done, as far as what they were playing, and it really tells you a lot about the era, as far as what. I just think it's really interesting that's the kind of music that they wanted to play. It wasn't very violent or aggressive in terms of, it was assertive, definitely, and to be sure, but it wasn't the kind of music that you listen to now that's almost cynical and nihilistic in the way it is. It was the 30s was a very optimistic period, even though the Great Depression was going on, because the World's Fair in New York was the apex of that sort of utopianism and optimism. And then, of course, you go into World War II. But even during the war, listen to the music that they were playing then. I just got a recording off of YouTube of wartime music, and it's very relaxing. There was also, what was it? There was that there was that video game about a nuclear fallout, and they have 50s and 40s music playing in the background. But I thought, I can't remember what's the name of the video game. A geek, as a masculine geek, I should know this.
Yeah, you're losing your cred here.
I know, Fallout 5
Jeez.
or something like that. It's called Galaxy Radio, so you can go look it up on YouTube.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, I really like listening to those episodes when I was in the car doing long commutes or something like that. It almost just takes you away from what's going on right now.
It's called Fallout.
Oh yeah, Fallout.
Yeah.
Galaxy Radio is a great list of different songs. I think Vince ended up just leaving the chat accidentally. So, he's back.
Whenever these broadcasts start, Google does this once or twice. Broadcast puts me out and then puts me back in. So there we go.
Gotcha. No worries. And I'm trying to get some records because I have behind me. You really can't see it. Let me turn the camera. So that right there is a 1949 Philco radio with a 78 RPM.
Well, look at that.
So it's got I have some Benny Goodman recordings on it. So this is I got this for $50. It was some old lady's house that they were trying to get rid of it. And so the radio would be up here, but it came out in 49. So it was a really weird period for radios because the golden era had really passed. That was in the mid 30s when you had all those different radio series going on. And 78 RPM was not a very popular record. I think that there was a 45 RPM or something like that was more popular. But this was an attempt to keep radio as the conversation piece in a living room. If you watch films like A Christmas Story or any old movie from the 30s, this was the TV. Now you have a big flat screen TV on the wall that really dominates the room. Well, back then it was the radio, but at the same time, you don't need a lot of space for an actual radio. You would have the cathedral style Philco radios that came out that were really popular to have, but this was an attempt to combine it with a phonograph and then keep it as the centerpiece of a room, and still trying to keep radio as the dominant medium. But it was clearly on its way out because TV had come out, and I think it come out in the 30s, late 30s or mid 30s, but it really didn't get popular because there was no channels. But in the late 40s, it was finally starting to move towards that.
Ralstonian Report wants to know if we listened to any of the radio classes on Sirius.
Oh, so this is not 30s music. I do listen to Radio Dismuke, which is some guy who has a collection of all these amazing old 1910, 1920s recordings on RPM and plays them. And then sometimes during the year, they will do a live recording of these very, very rare records that they pull out of a vault or something like that. So that's what okay. One thing I noticed is going on in my neck of the woods, this is just classic Pacific Northwest culture, but it might be occurring elsewhere, is they take 30s songs and they add almost a hip hop beat to it. They make it a techno type thing. I'm not a huge fan of it. I feel like it's diluting the power of the original songs and making it into something it's not. But no, I usually just download stuff. Oh, I'm trying to think of who else might have been really big in the 30s. I mean, there's a lot of Bob Hope really didn't get into it, I think, until the 40s and 50s.
Ella Fitzgerald, or is that a little later?
Oh, okay. Ella Fitzgerald and Louis Armstrong. Moonlight in Vermont is one of the best songs of. I don't know if that came out in the 30s, but those two.
You said there's already one best song. Now you have two, so there's two best songs.
It was a great song of that era. Gotcha. If somebody's going to say what summarizes this era, that was one of them. The other one was what's her name? Billie Holiday. I think her song is on that Galaxy Radio soundtrack for Fallout. I think it's I can't remember the name of the song, but it's one of the earlier songs in that. That's amazing too. Just those slow sort of. It's almost something that you could do a slow dance to, or you could just be sitting in a diner. I think that that's what I like about the songs. They're either good for a slow dance. There are also songs that you can actually dance to. This has been the biggest problem with a lot of high schools. Why, especially in my era, they were having a problem with school dances. That's because the songs they picked had no beat, and they weren't. They're not appropriate for any kind of type of dance unless you have a vertical pole.
How about Annette Hanshaw?
Annette Hanshaw.
Yeah.
I don't. The name sounds familiar. I don't know. There's a lot of artists I listen to. I don't know who they are, but I would recognize their songs.
That's from that era. That's from the Ralstonian Report.
Yeah.
Cool.
So,
now you got involved with that era of music later in life. What did you start with? And like how like when you when was it like the first, like for me growing up, my mom always listened to Gordon Lightfoot, Elvis. I have Elvis records, Beatles, all that. But when I was old enough to purchase things, I was cassettes. Like I love classical music. I don't know anyone who's watching actually knows what these are. Gabriel Fiore. It's fantastic. A little bit of this is like museum history here. This stuff is great. And I still have a turntable with a cassette player mixed in and a CD player. Hey, George is on. I put on the Sinatra, Count Basie, Pandora, and listened to that most days.
Oh yeah,
Count Basie. Frank Sinatra. Why didn't we think of that?
Yeah, well, I was going to say him, but I was thinking I was just watching a film with him and thought he was more into the 40s. But yeah, Night and Day by Frank Sinatra is another great song. I mean, he did so many good songs, but that was I remember listening to that. In fact, I can actually pull up, if you want to chat about something for about 5 seconds, I can pull up because I have all these downloads on my computer.
Okay.
1 second, let me pull them up.
I'll share this too. I shared this with you guys earlier. This is Julius La Rosa. This is this is my father's cousin. He was born in Brooklyn, and I think he put out 7 albums, numerous singles. But yeah, it's kind of cool. I'm a member of the family.
So yeah, some of the ones that I'm seeing here is Buddy Morrow and his orchestra. Oh, Night Train. That's a great song by Buddy Morrow and his orchestra. Another good one. There's the Battle. These are all stuff that I just downloaded from a record. These are recordings from radio episodes. The Battle of the Bands with Barnett, Herman, and Keaton. There's also obviously Louis Armstrong, and I actually have. Rosemary Clooney is another great one. I don't though she was in the 40s. But she did a show.
Why does that name sound familiar?
White Christmas.
Oh, okay.
She also did a radio show with Bing Crosby for a while. Oh, another great guy. I think he was in the 40s mostly, in the late or early 50s, but Mario Lanza, who was this opera singer, and he did a lot of fantastic songs like Bésame Mucho, and he did a movie where he did a lot of singing as well. But yeah, Rosemary Clooney is also a great singer on that. And I'm trying to go through the rest of the ones that I have here. That's more of a miscellaneous. But yeah, those are the list of. And like I said, there's a lot of artists that I have, and I hear them on a soundtrack collection, but they don't announce themselves in it, as opposed to the radio shows where they would say, here's this guy with his orchestra, and here's the song we're going to be singing. That's how I know about Duke Ellington, because Benny Goodman played a bunch of his songs on his radio show, and they would say, Benny Goodman, his orchestra, plays Duke Ellington's Caravan or something like that.
My father would always talk about the Velvet Fog, Mel Torme. Okay. Yep.
Have you guys ever seen? Have you ever seen Top Secret?
Yes.
Okay, I finally got the Mel Torme comment halfway through the movie, right?
All right.
How do we know you're not Mel Torme? And then they do the Elvis routine.
Yep.
Okay, if you guys have not seen Top Secret with a very, very young Val Kilmer, you've got to see that. It's by the same people who made Airplane, and it's in my opinion, it's even more clever because they do a ton of cinematography tricks throughout the entire thing, and a lot of them are actually very complicated. As much as some of the humor is pretty can be slapstick or straightforward, a lot of it was very sophisticated for the time, and we tried to replicate in some of my video classes in high school. You were mentioning, Vince, stuff that I listened to when I was a kid. It was Neil Diamond and the Beach Boys.
Okay.
And that was because we would go on these vacation trips, these 15-hour drives to go see my relatives, because my dad prided himself on the fact that we could drive 15 hours, 1,500 miles in a day. And so we would have Neil Diamond and the Beach Boys.
It's a long ass drive.
That is a long drive, and that is a lot. So I heard, and it was only one Neil Diamond soundtrack, and that was to the Jazz Singer.
All right.
So when I hear his songs playing at any time, I immediately think of driving down Interstate 5 towards California.
Gotcha. Does it bring back good memories, or is it like, oh God, turn that off?
I actually liked listening to it because a lot of the songs were, I just like Neil Diamond. And then I have a lot of his early records as well when he was younger. And the Beach Boys, I also listened to a ton of their stuff. Endless Summer. Those are songs that when it gets sunny and warm out and you're just doing a drive, like I'll be driving on one of the county roads or whatever, I'll just have a Beach Boys song playing in the background. But the best summer song that I grew up listening to was Drift Away.
Oh, okay.
So that's one of my favorite. That's where you have a smooth beer. It's a sunny, warm day at 7 o'clock in the evening, and you're watching the sun slowly set, and you're just hanging out with buddies listening to that song. That to me is heaven.
That's pretty cool. I like it. How about you, Tim? You growing up, what did you listen to? What was your music of choice?
Well, I can talk about music of choice, and I can talk about what's burned into my memory.
Let's go with burned. Let's go with burned in your memory.
Burned in my memory. Okay,
yeah,
that's a good place to start. So, Barry Manilow.
Okay,
that was one of my mom's favorite, and so whenever I hear Barry Manilow, I think back to those times of just on loop with a record player in the background. And my girlfriend and I have this thing is that whenever we do something very difficult, we look at each other and we just, looks like we made it.
Nice.
Just sing like that. It's an opportune time to sing something like that.
Absolutely.
But let's see, she didn't listen to too much Neil Diamond, although I remember when I was in school, this is sometime in the early 80s, the song America. We're coming to America.
Oh, yeah.
And all that. I was in this little pageant type thing where I was Uncle Sam and I had the hat and a little beard. We were doing this routine to the song, that's what I remember in grade school. And what else could have been burned into my memory? Like movie soundtracks. My mom liked Fiddler on the Roof.
Oh yeah, my mom did too.
Yeah, so she played that one a lot. But it wasn't until many, many years later when I actually saw the film version of the musical and then listened to the soundtrack.
Okay.
So that's what I'd say is burned into my memory. As far as what I enjoyed listening to was classical, of course, and that started at an early age when I was in elementary school, maybe around 9 or 10, but not seriously until I was a teenager. And then, because I was a kid in the 80s, of course, 80s pop, some 70s rock, things like that.
Okay. How about you, Rob? I'm going to guess it's got to be metal.
Well, that's always been my go-to, but going back to burned in memory, that's actually a good way that Tim put it. The first concert I ever saw was Billy Joel for his Innocent Man album. So back in 82, 83, something like that. That was the first concert I'd ever attended. And so Billy Joel has always kind of held a place for me, especially his older music. another one that's burned into memory. And granted, it's definitely not nearly as eclectic or as old as some of the stuff you guys have been discussing. Neil Diamond, definitely. I remember a lot of that. My mom listened to him. She listened to a lot of, I guess, what we would call easy listening now, but it would have been 70s music like Christopher Cross, ABBA, even though that was a little more disco than anything.
Engelbert Humperdinck.
Yep. But one that always sticks out, well, two that always stick out for me that would be my father's influence is Three Dog Night, especially one, and just an old-fashioned love song.
Oh, okay.
Those were a couple of the songs he always liked to listen to, and he also liked Iron Butterfly. And so that's kind of where I guess I got my first taste of, we call it nowadays, it would either have been hard rock or acid rock. Believe it or not, I am not a huge fan of Led Zeppelin. My dad is a big fan of them, and whenever he puts on Led Zeppelin, I usually tend to tune out and go into another room. And I think it's mostly just because it's been overplayed. It's just like, man, even today, you turn on the radio and hey, what do you know? There's Stairway to Heaven or there's Cashmere, whoop-de-fucking-do.
Well, you go into any music store and you go into the guitar section, there's usually a sign that says no Stairway to Heaven.
Exactly. And there's a reason for that.
Yep.
But when I was back when I was a little kid, so probably like 8 or 9, I don't know if you guys remember seeing this on television or not, but I remember Kiss put out dolls.
Oh yeah, the Mego dolls. Yeah,
they were about yay tall, about a foot tall, 18.
Yeah, I remember those.
Something like that. Yeah. Okay. Well, when I was little, I loved Kiss, even though I had never heard Kiss. And because it was the makeup and it was Catman and it was Space Ace and it's Star Child and the Demon. And so, I liked them because they were like comic book superheroes. And it wasn't until the 80s when they actually had taken the makeup off that I actually got into them during the Asylum tour, was the second concert I ever went to. And my mother was so paranoid and so afraid that bad shit was going to happen that I had to take my dad with me to that show. And it was Wasp who opened up for him. And it was Kiss was the headliner. And Wasp was amazing, considering that all these guys were over 6 foot tall. And I had a chance to meet those guys at a record store downtown before the show. And when they walked in, I swear to God, I thought they were being carried on people's shoulders because of how tall they were. And in fact, nope, they're on their own feet, walking in on their own. But that was like my second concert that I ever went to. That and Chicago. That was another one that I saw. Was right around the same time with Chicago. And that would have been back, I think, during the album 17, if I remember right. Peter Cetera was still in the band, and they were very, very blue pill, being without you takes a lot of getting used to, that kind of stuff.
Love Me Tomorrow.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah.
Just say you'll love me for the rest of my life.
That's one of the few Chicago songs that I actually don't mind listening to repeatedly. The other ones are just too treacly.
Yeah, exactly. I agree with you 100% there that most of it, it's too sappy. It's too gooey, I guess would be a good word. But, too
saccharine.
Yeah, exactly. But I don't have it with me because my cassette tapes are actually all in storage at this point because everything either went to MP3 now or it's on CD. But my first album that I bought on my own was actually Ozzy Osbourne's Bark at the Moon. That was the very first album that I had ever bought. I know my parents, probably a year or two before that, gave me Hall & Oates' Private Eyes. Was the first cassette I ever had, period. And I still listen, even though I have it on MP3 now, I still listen to Private Eyes. I think for being kind of bluesy, rock, popish, I still kind of dig Hall & Oates. And so that is one of the ones that's more 80s popish that I'll listen to. But yeah, you'd be correct, Vince, that most of it is metal, hard rock. I gained a wider appreciation of music when I got into college and was a disc jockey at the radio station up on campus.
Oh, cool.
At that particular time, the radio station where it was non-commercial, most radio stations, most college stations don't have any particular format. It's kind of whatever the disc jockey likes, that's what they play for their block of time. Well, our station, for the years that I was in college, decided to actually try a traditional format in the sense of like what commercial stations do. And so we were the first hip hop station in Utah. Nobody else at the time was playing hip hop. And so I ended up developing an appreciation. I wouldn't say a taste for rap and hip hop, but I developed an appreciation for it.
So you were the real life version for music of Footloose.
Yes, that would be me. Yes. It's funny you mentioned that. When I watched especially the original version of Footloose with Kevin Bacon, and the town that they shot most of that in was Lehigh, which is probably about 45 minutes from where I live. And to see Lehigh as how it was and what it is now, you literally cannot, you wouldn't know, you wouldn't know that that's where they shot the movie. In fact, the roller mills where the dance takes place and it's kind of an iconic fixture in the movie, that's literally like the only thing really left that's recognizable from that film. Everything else, Lehigh grew up and exploded. And so looking at Lehigh now compared to back then, you wouldn't know that they were the same place. So that's what I got for music for the moment.
Cool. For myself, like I said, I started out listening to, actually, let's see, burned in my memory though. Gordon Lightfoot, The Wreck of the Edmund Fitzgerald.
Yes.
Oh man, that still gives, it's like icicles. I remember listening to that and standing on my parents' couch, just rocking with the beat and pretending I was at the helm of a ship as it was sinking. It was fantastic. A very, very sad song.
Speaking of which, have you guys ever heard of Stanley Rogers? He was a Canadian folk singer. He wrote or I don't know if he wrote two, but he sang two fantastic songs. One of them was Down to Old Maui, and it's about these fishermen or whatever they're doing, but they're working up in the seas around Japan, and they're going back to so they're singing about how they're going back to Maui after being up in the Arctic area for 6 months. And you can just tell, this guy didn't experience that life, but he sings as though he did. So there's so much heart and soul into this man's voice. He's got a fantastic, I believe, baritone voice. And
what's his name?
His name is Stanley Rogers. He died in the 80s.
Rogers.
He wasn't very old. And there was also another song he did, Barrett's Privateers, which was fantastic as well. There's videos of him singing it on YouTube. But I remember my cousin was singing one of his songs where we were canoeing across the lake, and I'd never heard the song before. So I went and looked it up, and I was just blown away by I think what it is the authenticity of his singing compared to other singers who have also done those songs. Because I've been listening to a lot of sea shanties, not shanties. And a lot of them where they're sort of just singing it because they're singing it, as opposed to someone who's singing it as though they're the person who wrote the song. That's always my preference, is to listen to someone who sings it the most heartfeltfully.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's how I feel about Gordon Lightfoot and a lot of his music.
Speaking of Gordon Lightfoot, the one that just came to my mind that I liked even better than The Wreck of the Edmund Fitzgerald was Sundown.
Yeah, it's just something haunting and bittersweet.
Well, and to me, I mean, the way he sings it, you know, when he's saying the part about, you know, you better take care if I find you've been creeping around my back stair.
Yep.
It's not only haunting, it's to me, it's a warning.
Oh, it's a little threatening, yeah.
Yeah, that it's like it's foreboding in a way. It's like, oh yeah, you better take care if I find you've been creeping around my back stair. Absolutely. That it's like, ooh, shit, don't let this guy catch you. You're toast.
Yeah, another genre that I actually got into at a time when I was really looking into my family, the Irish side of my family. I was listening to a lot of Irish folk music, and I was also listening to a lot of this. There's this one guy, his name is David Kincaid, and what he did is he looked up all these Irish folk songs during the Civil War that pertain to the Civil War. And what's interesting about them, and he's recorded all of them, and you can find them on YouTube or wherever, is that there's songs sung on both sides of the fight. So you had one song that's called The Dreadful Engagement, that's about the Irishmen who were killed during the siege of New Orleans. Then you have there's one that's about fighting for Uncle Sam, and then there's another one that's talking about Paddy's Lamentation, that's about coming to Ireland, coming from Ireland to try and get away from the famine.
Didn't the Iron Brigade have a couple of their own songs?
Yeah, there was the Fighting 69th, which was a great song. But then you also had the Irish Brigade on the Confederate side. And in fact, if any of you have seen the film Gods and Generals, you'll know that scene where the Irish Brigade on the Union side is going up against, at Fredericksburg, the stone wall that it's defended by an Irish brigade of Confederates. And so there's this really poignant scene where these Irishmen are killing each other and just really livid at the fact that they have to shoot each other. Mm-hmm. And that's reflected in some of these songs where, and so I really like that. But there's also the Irish folk music that's pretty good as well. If you've seen Sherlock Holmes, The Rocky Road to Dublin, which is one of my favorites, which I can sing. I will not sing it here. I've done it on few occasions, but I can actually sing.
You sing?
Come on, let's do it.
Yeah,
do it.
Tim sang. Tim sang. Hey, everyone in the chat, you want to hear?
No, it's not happening.
We want to hear him sing.
Not happening today.
Yeah, but hang on. Let's see how many yays we get.
Yeah, let's get a bunch of yays.
Who wants to hear?
TJ.
No, when we get super chats in and somebody makes a most generous donation of $150
there you
to the
go.
cause, then I might do it. I do know a couple of songs. One's O Roche de Vahawalia. That is a
Irish
call me? Song. Sure. It's a Irish folk song, and that Gaelic is. I was studying for a very brief time Gaelic, and it was very difficult because it's so different from our language.
We have two yeses. We have 2 yeses in the chat. MSW 644 and Metal Drummer 67.
Which ironically enough, there is no yes and no. There's no yes or no in Gaelic. So if somebody asks you, "Can you sing?" you reply, "I can sing." You don't say yes, because there is no yes or no.
Hey, don't change the fucking topic, TJ. We've got Vince, me, Tim, and we got like 2-3 dudes in the chat that want to hear you sing. So we outnumber you like 5-1.
Yeah, well, I'm gonna pull a Cromwell and dissolve the Parliament and then become your protector.
How very Puritan of him.
Yeah, I know, right? What? Wait, you sang earlier. Didn't you?
What did I sing?
Did you say no? That was Tim. But you didn't do anything before the broadcast, did you?
No,
okay.
Yeah, I'm like Will Ferrell in Step Brothers, right? I have a great voice, but I sing only twice.
You're like a crab. You never walk or talk in a straight line either. You gotta dodge this shit.
All over the place.
I have been called the voice of a generation, just not mine.
Gotcha. Well, that's a compliment. That's good.
Mm-hmm.
No, it's from Step Brothers, where he's Will Ferrell saying he doesn't sing for anybody, and his mom's like, "Oh, he's really good. He just doesn't sing for anybody." He goes, "I've been called the voice of my generation,
just not mine."
Yeah, exactly.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Another good film. Just be prepared. If you haven't seen it, if you've seen it, you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, it's been a little bit. I've only seen bits and pieces of it once. So we're segueing into films now. Is that what this is?
Well, film. I'd say film soundtracks.
Soundtracks.
Well, here's an example of where I really started to think, since we're talking about masculine geek and all this other stuff, and people are saying, well, this is geek topics. I was really struck by, and I understand it's fiction, the example I'm about to give, but there's that scene, and I know I'm going to be using Band of Brothers yet again as an example, but there's this one scene in one of the episodes where the guy's giving updates about America, and he's like, Abbott Costello released another film, Rita Hayworth's getting married, send your grievances. And then he says Oklahoma's running for another season, and the entire group just starts breaking out into these songs from Oklahoma, or one of the songs. And so they had seen the play or the musical, and they enough to know the lyrics and all that. So I thought this was a time when one of the most lethal forces on the Western Front, Easy Company, a good chunk of them know songs to a musical. Whereas nowadays, if you are a band and you know the lyrics to a musical like Oklahoma or The Sound of Music or The King and I or any of these other ones, that it's considered, they assume that you're a dork or a geek.
Gotcha.
But it's not something.
That's a question too, and maybe I'm sure Tim can answer this. American musicals, isn't that, or wasn't that the America's answer to opera, the musical?
Well, I can't say. It's an interesting question. I mean, what immediately comes to mind that kind of straddles between an opera and a musical is Gilbert and Sullivan, which more properly you could say falls within classical music, even though it is light opera. And in fact, there are companies that are described as light opera because it's not serious like a Wagner or Puccini or something like that, but it sticks to more or less the same kind of format because it is a stage production with music and it's orchestral and, and then Rodgers and Hammerstein, I mean, those are probably some of their earliest musicals, and those date back to, help me out here, TJ, 30s and 40s, would you say? Oh, he left.
He's going to get his singing voice.
Okay.
Ready.
Yeah. So Rodgers and Hammerstein are the two that I can think of that are the earliest types of musicals, and I don't recall if there was such a thing as the musical in Europe. It might just be
I think it's
a curiously American phenomenon.
I think it is. I seem to recall hearing that. That's why I asked for some clarification. I could be wrong. I wonder what the first musical. I wonder what that would be.
Oh, we could look it up.
Do a little research on that. Yeah. Tim has a question for you, TJ.
Unmute your mic, TJ.
Oh my God.
There you go.
Okay. Some technical malfunctions. There's a query to be pointed my way.
Yes, from Tim. But I think Tim. Okay.
So TJ, do you recall if Rodgers and Hammerstein is the 30s? No,
I don't. Here's the thing. They did their music, and then they did they did their musicals, and then the films came out. And I'm familiar with most of the film versions, like The Sound of Music. I've seen the play and I've seen the movie. Ironically enough, not that this is necessarily germane, but one of the earliest films I remember ever seeing was Indiana Jones, which was preceded by or followed by or The Sound of Music. I watched The Sound of Music and Indiana Jones back to back. Right.
Wait, which Indiana Jones?
Yeah,
the Raiders of the Lost Ark. Yeah,
the best
one.
At age 4. So I got the gist of
4. God, I'm old.
Yeah.
Well, no, it wasn't like the films. This wasn't
damn whippersnapper.
Off my lawn.
Were you in fucking diapers or what?
Wait a minute, you're in the movie theater at 4?
No. I didn't watch them in the theater. Gosh,
okay.
You guys I was at a family retreat or reunion at Lake Tahoe, and they just were like, what are we going to do with the kids? Oh, let's just put on some movies. So they put on, I think, The Sound of Music, which was followed by Indiana Jones. So for some
Raiders
reason,
of the Lost Ark, a really good one for a 4-year-old to watch.
I know, right? Especially
mean,
the end. They scare the
Nazis,
shit out of you.
Nazis' faces melting off. Oh, yeah.
Mhm.
Oh yeah, yeah, guys. I learned you don't open the Ark of the Covenant. Like, how hard is
Exactly.
this done?
Well, whatever you
X does
do,
not-
keep
and
your
X-
eyes shut, Marion.
X does not mark the spot.
No, that's the Last Crusade.
Yeah.
They're both good.
Shit,
As far as I'm concerned, and it's a very rare instance where the third installment is actually on par with the first one.
well, that's because of Sean Connery.
Mhm.
Well, that's true. Yeah.
What about Temple of Doom?
No, get out of here. No.
That movie never happened. What
Well,
are you
I
talking
mean,
about?
we
There
not
was
to,
only 2 Indiana Jones movies.
I know,
so,
right?
so to pull back and answer Tim's original question, you were asking whether I consider them the 30s. No, but here's one of the problems that we have with those eras is I think they overlapped a lot more than what we would have seen, say, an 80s song when you hear it. For example, Journey or Don't Stop Believing, those power ballads, that was the 80s. And then you could kind of tell what the 90s were. There was that grunge music.
Yeah, that was the power
And
ballad,
early
early 80s.
Right. And then in the 70s, it was the disco music. There wasn't any disco music in the 60s. And then the 60s.
TJ, there's more of a hallmark to 80s music, and that's synthesizers.
Oh, yeah.
Unmistakably.
Right. And so and that's where I don't really differentiate or segregate in terms of the 30s, 40s, and 50s in that sense, because a lot of the music's similar. And also a lot of the stuff that they did, for example, most people have heard As Time Goes By if you've seen Casablanca, but that was not the first version of that song. There were several other versions.
Really?
That was the one that made it popular, or I think really made it work. But I think most people who've seen or at least this is what I thought when I saw Casablanca. I thought As Time Goes By was a song written, was an original song for the movie, but it wasn't. If you were watching it as an adult back in the 40s, when it first came out in theaters, you would have heard that song before, chances were. But they did a different rendition of it, but it's the only rendition most people are aware of today, if they even know about it at all.
Oh, wow.
So that's an example of where you saw that also with movies. There was An Affair to Remember that came out, I think, in the 40s, and then they did a remake of it 10 years later with Cary Grant and Deborah Kerr, and that had a good song.
Fair to Remember, that's kind of noirish, isn't it?
No, it's not noir. It's more of it's a very interesting romantic romance film, because it's not it's so different from any other romance film I've ever seen. Not that my knowledge and experience on that is really extensive, but it doesn't follow the traditional plot line or summary of most romance films, especially none that come out today. All the ones that come out today are absolutely atrocious. And so but I did want to show something else for show and tell, if I may, if it pleases the crown.
Absolutely.
So so I was talking when I was years ago, I was talking about my interest in radios, and I just bought the Philco, and my grandpa heard that. So he went into one of his back rooms at his place, and he took out his 1936 General Electric radio.
Oh, shit.
Let me pull this back so you can get a better view of it.
Oh, wow. Does that work?
It does, kind of. It's just, it has not been changed at all.
Oh.
Nice.
So,
wow.
And it still has the original paperwork on the inside from General Electric, and then it has a repair shop information, but it hasn't been changed. I'm sure if I took it to somebody, they could get it working. It just needs some sort of big. And I talked to a repair guy, and he said it needed something. But what was cool about it is one of the channels you could flip it to was the police scanner.
Oh,
police
cool.
Nice.
Yeah.
You need to get that fixed and then have it for one of the shows.
Yeah. Yeah.
Get earbuds for it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was I have that up on my writing desk that I've been practicing with the quill pen on for stuff. But yeah, that's one of what I really enjoy, having that there as a centerpiece for it. My hope is to have it. So this is not necessarily related to music, but kind of is, I want to take an old radio, the box, the frame, take out the radio and put in some sort of an MP3, something that'll play music, but I can put the songs onto it and then connect it to the original speakers in it. There's these guys on the Art of Manliness. They took a Bluetooth and connected it to an old World War II telephone, like one of those mobile ones that you would crank.
Yeah.
Pick up. They did the same thing with that. So I thought maybe we could do that with radios. It seems a part of me doesn't, I like being an originalist. I don't like taking out old stuff from a box. So I wouldn't want to touch this one. I'd like to get this one working again, but I do want to take a radio that has because the woodwork on this stuff is amazing. I mean, that radio over there is a really great piece of wood furniture by itself, even if it doesn't have anything in it. It's just, I really like that art, the Art Deco, artistic design. I really like that. I think it's very. Oh, go ahead.
Sorry to interrupt you. I don't know if you mentioned already. Does that the turntable inside when you put, does that work?
It does not. I hesitate to tell this story because it's so bad. But I short circuited the radio.
Oh no.
So I don't know if the radio is repairable, but I want to get it fixed if it's possible. But that's how you would turn on the radio, and then there was a switch where you would connect the power from the radio to the phonograph, and then also you would have to connect it to the speakers. So there was all this wiring that I was working on, and I accidentally sent the power through the radio. So it set a part of it on fire.
Well,
oh man,
you're not working on our electronics.
Fuck no.
Stay away.
My knowledge has increased since then. I've learned from my mistakes.
So now it's a manual turntable. He has to do it himself.
He's just got a crank.
I could actually, if I knew enough. So the radio's damaged, but the phonograph could actually work if I was able to plug in a power source, because it'll connect directly to the speakers. That's not the problem. The problem is putting power into it. And I mean, it would be fantastic because I have records. Let me actually, well, I'm not going to grab them because I got to take off the typewriter and a whole bunch of other stuff. But I've got Benny Goodman records. I've got a whole bunch of other phonographs that I'm hoping to get. And I'm not really keen on buying a brand new, because you can get them now at Walmart or whatever. You can get 78 RPM turntables that you can put them on. But I'm an originalist. I like being able to restore something to its original form instead of gutting it and putting something new inside. The problem with radios is that it's not going to play old time radio. It's going to play stuff that's being played now.
Well, yeah. But the fact that it works is fascinating.
Yeah, it's funny because my grandpa also gave me a 1940s flashlight that still works. And wow. I also bought a little water heater because if you guys buy it, you plug it in, press the button, and it'll heat up the water. I bought one of those from a World War II store that still works. Oh, sure. And I just thought, it's like, this is what really bothers me about nowadays. I bought a water heater thing it's for like making a cup of coffee. I bought it for $10. It's 70, 80 years old. It still works. Whereas you buy stuff now,
it lasts 10 minutes.
It lasts 10 minutes. So everybody's saying, well, look at how cheaper, look at how less expensive things are. Yeah. How long do they last you?
That's a good point. The workmanship and the care and the attention that goes into products now is just compared to what you're talking about. Right. It's no comparison.
So here's a big question. I don't know how fanatical or religious you guys are about this, but there's some people who feel that records are the purest, other than live, listening to music live, that vinyl records are the purest form of listening to a song, because the argument is if you're listening to an MP3, it's diluting the quality of the music by compressing it, and it just sounds better to listen to an original recording as opposed to stuff that's compressed the way it is on digital. So what are your thoughts on that? Are you...
Well, I think from a feeling point of view, as far as like the actual tactile experience of taking the record out and having it in your hand and you're feeling the grooves and you're placing it on the turntable and you're turning it on and setting the needle and then hearing that scratch. Yeah. I would go with that. I love that. That's amazing. And the sound is pretty pure. It's clear.
It's warmer.
Exactly. Yeah.
The way I would describe it.
Thank you, Rob. Yeah, it's warmer. To me, it resonates more.
Yeah.
When I'm listening to it, it's just there's a warmer, more inclusive feel to having a record play.
Yeah, I mean that's why I want to get this phonograph fixed and repaired and get more records, because I have music sometimes playing, or I'll have podcasts playing, but that's another reason why I like the music, is because it's very soft, it's very smooth, it almost adds to the atmosphere. Whereas if I'm listening to most podcasts, it's not erratic, but it's it's like listening to talk radio, which I don't listen to. I used to listen to it back in the day when I was in college, but I don't listen to it anymore. And one of the reasons is because it just gets you really tense. When I'm listening to some podcasts, some of them are funny, even though they're dark or whatever. But I think that's just a reflection of the times we live in. Whereas I love listening to some of these songs where it's like, come in, take a seat, have a cup of coffee or a drink, relax. You know, there's. I don't mean to sound like a sap, but the optimism of a lot of these songs, like the happiness or joy in a lot of these songs, even though they're energetic as well. If you listen to some of them, they're just so they're almost, I don't know. I feel like it's hard to avoid using words like uplifting or makes you happier to listen to. Whereas a lot of songs today you listen to and you walk away, you want to go punch something.
Yeah, well, that's fine because you're using it to describe what you're feeling as you're listening to it. Right. So there's no right or wrong for that. But I guess that's what music is for. How about you, Tim? As far as records are concerned, the sound and the quality compared to digital.
Well, I'd say theoretically, you're probably right. It's a warmer sound. I mean, it's I'm trying to think when the last time I owned a record player. It's been many, many years ago. And I mean, when you grow up with it, that's what you're used to. And then I moved into cassettes, which had their own physicality to them. That was a little better than a record. You certainly didn't have the scratch, but because it was mechanical, then the sound just degrades over time the more you play it. And then CDs, and then just getting into digital music. And that's what my ear is accustomed to. Listening to a record would seem odd, even though there's a part of me that just kind of remembers that. And a friend of mine, he's very much into vinyl. He's got 30 records right now on the turntable. And like I said, that's what you grew up listening to if you're of a certain age, until it changed. So it's a hard one, but I would say theoretically, yes, I would agree, is that it's a warmer sound because of the physicality of it, the needle that's in the grooves, but also just the system itself. I mean, it's not compressed, it's not precise. There's a little bit of an imperfect quality to it, and it's just that it's difficult to describe. Is that you're listening to a recording on an older system, and it's not so optimized. You understand what I mean?
Yeah, I think it's almost as though it's an uncanny, I don't want to say uncanny valley, but something similar to that, where if something's too perfect, it bothers us. It's as though humans are
fake.
Well, no, we look at something that's way too perfect and we say this can't be real, because to be real, there has to be imperfections in something. And so when we hear the scratchiness of whatever, maybe I don't have this fully figured out, but I think when we're listening to a recording where there's the scratchiness, or maybe we assume is it's not real. There's the things that are, I think what it is, I'm thinking of this on the fly, so bear with me. I think that what's going on is with a real life recording, there's things there that are just part of the sound that's removed when we're listening to filtered versions or when they get rid of something. And so for them to remove that from a recording, or to do a recording in a studio and then you compress it and all that, it removes the stuff that reminds us that it was actually recorded. and it's as though we want something
by a human being.
Right. Because I like some of those recordings, or I even like some films that are a little imperfect in the way they are, because it just, for some reason, we like that. It makes us comfortable. But the same thing with recordings. I think it also almost reminds us of a different era. We get to experience. We almost get to go back in time because time travel is not possible, except in our imagination. So for us, we almost get to experience that when we listen to live recordings, at least from my generation, because I never grew up in an era where vinyl records was the thing. But maybe that's just me. I haven't quite figured this out. I'm just thinking of different theories for why we like listening, or maybe there's something that just our ears and our minds respond better toward, that are found in vinyl records that are not found in MP3 recordings or digital recordings or CDs.
Well, I have something else to add to that. It's the record sleeves. So I think it was you, Vince, who was talking about it's almost ritualistic, you could say, when you take the record itself out of the sleeve and you put it on the turntable, and then you take the needle and then you put it on the groove, and then if you had to get to whatever your favorite song was, like say you had to skip a few tracks, you had to pick it up and then find out exactly where that groove was when you drop it in there. But there was the experience of just the artwork on the record sleeve. So you took the record out, you put it on the turntable, and then you opened up to see what the artwork was and reading the lyrics if they were in there. And the record sleeve itself was part of that ritualistic experience of whatever the music happened to be. Could have been classical, could have been a musical, could have been Led Zeppelin, could have been, I remember one of my prize records was the Pet Shop Boys from the late 80s. It was, what was it? I can't remember it, but it had like a Technicolor rainbow on the front of it, stripes. It's from '88. It's the one that has Domino Dancing on it. But I know from that record sleeve, it just sticks out. It's burned into my memory, using the road phrase.
Yeah, I think, Tim, you've got a good point, because the ritual is part of what we like. Because it was the same thing with movies now, where there's no ritual anymore. Because up until, say,
there's a ritual. It's just not a ritual you care to sit through.
Yeah, in the sleeves.
And what would happen is families would you would, from what I've read and from what I understand, when you went to the movies, you dressed up. It was like going to a concert. You would go to the movie, you'd pay the money and go get the popcorn, and then you would sit through a cartoon, a newsreel, a short film, and a little comedy sketch. Which, if you buy
a whole event,
if you buy certain films like Captain Blood, and a bunch of other Warner Brothers films, they have those original stuff that you can watch, and then you would get the main feature. But it would be in this theater, and it was almost like, for them, it was a little bit down from going to an actual live theater, but it was this evening or afternoon thing that would take up a lot of time. Whereas now you just click, you're watching a film on Netflix and you're like, I'm bored. There's 300 other films to watch. Let's go watch another film. And the same thing with music. I click on a song, one of the many Irish folk songs I'm listening to. I get halfway through it and I was like, I think it just I don't know, maybe it just causes we have too many choices so readily available to us. And not that I'm saying I don't like the idea of having all this old time radio stuff. I mean, I have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of radio serial episodes on my computer, which is fantastic. I wouldn't want to have them not recorded or whatever, but I think it came at a cost, and that cost
definitely enables laziness and sloth. That's for sure.
I think it causes us to not appreciate something because it doesn't cost us anything. I think that's part of it.
The value is very low.
Because when you go to a film, you got to invest time and you're committing. I think it's also commitment. When you watch a film, and then if you would go see an orchestra or performance, you had to invest in that, because you couldn't just get up. I mean, under most circumstances, you couldn't just get up and leave an opera performance. You didn't, because you paid a lot of money to go see that stuff.
Yeah. That's
yeah,
true.
but it's more fulfilling in my case to go to an opera production than most contemporary movies, where you sit there and you're just like, I paid how much money for this piece of shit?
And well, I mean, let's not compare Tosca to Captain Marvel. Let's not go there. But what I'm saying is,
I would never make that mistake. Never, ever, ever.
I guess what I was saying is, we had these original forms of art. We had theater, you have musicals, you have orchestras, you have operas, you have all the different stuff. And I think that in a lot of ways, the more you move away from that, the more you rob it of the purity of the art form. And I understand film is a form of art, and cartoons are a form of art as well. The animated films that Disney did and all that stuff, they can be art, but it's almost as though we've gotten to the point where we've lost all the value of that.
Well,
art.
Warner Brothers cartoons are definitely art.
Oh, I mean,
that's
Warner
where I can date my love of classical music from Bugs Bunny.
Yeah, I was gonna bring that up, Vince.
Yeah.
But before we go down that rabbit hole, there was something I wanted to bring up.
I see what you did there.
Yeah, there was something I wanted to bring up, TJ. That was a contrary opinion. Actually, does anybody know who Glenn Gould was?
The name sounds familiar.
I've heard the name. Yeah.
Okay, so Gould, he was a famous Canadian pianist, active 50s, 60s. You know, around the time when classical recordings became more available to the masses. And so if you were like your average Joe and you were like, hey, you know, Gould playing Beethoven, you know, you might have it in your collection. But an interesting film to watch that came out in the early 90s was 33 short films on Glenn Gould. And it's just these little vignettes about his life and about his personality. And the thing about Gould was he was a brilliant musician, technically perfect. Well, I wouldn't say technically perfect, but very technically proficient, and very wide-ranging repertoire. Played everything from Bach to like Hindemith, contemporary 20th century classical composers. But he performed from an early age, and then he stopped. And he was very much getting into recording. He stopped when he was fairly young, like in his early 30s, I believe it was, because he did not want to. I forget his exact words. You know, he's quoted talking about this somewhere. He didn't want to go through the charade of a live concert anymore, and he preferred moving towards recordings. Why? It's because, number one, you don't have to put the monkey suit on to do a performance as a pianist or some other kind of musician. And number two is, in the recording booth, and mind you, this is in the 50s and 60s, you can capture the sound a lot better, and you're not so, I guess you would say, distracted by the performer. You're just focusing on the sound itself. So that's an interesting contrary opinion. Now, if he lived to today, it's hard to say if he would move a little bit back, because of the same reason you were saying, is that because it's everything is on demand, and at the snap of your fingers, you can move forward and backwards, just seconds at a time. And then it just sounds a little too perfect. There's not that type of constraint that you once had with either a live performance or an older recording on a vinyl record.
That's a good point.
Yeah, I'm not saying it's always the case that it's bad to do something or the way they're recording. It's almost as though everything has its purpose, and there's a role to play for each of them. And what we have as people, we have a tendency to try to rely too much on one thing as a solution to something. So there's certain recordings that would just be better if they were done on vinyl or something like that. I haven't quite figured out how to say this, but I think that I don't know. I think that that's a legitimate point for someone who's trying to be trying to get it right, doesn't want to deal with the performance stuff. But I also think that there's some recordings where it'll never feel the same without that energy with the room. The live recording. I was in an Irish pub in Dingle a couple of years ago, and I was listening to performances there in the pub, and I just started recording it on my phone because I thought, I want to hear what it's like to be in an Irish pub listening to Irish people play music, as opposed to listening to a recording on a CD that was done in a studio booth where there's nobody around. Or then I was walking through Dublin and I was listening to a busker on the violin, and I just took out my phone and started recording him again because I wanted to hear what it felt like on the streets listening to someone performing live, because it comes in the little details where they accentuate that one note, or they play a one part a little bit slower than the other, and you get that idiosyncrasies that you don't get necessarily in a recording in a studio or something. I feel like it's good for certain things, like film soundtracks. I think are very good for sound recording studios because you want to get that, and you need that. It's got to be separate from the human. It's almost because it's background music. It's not necessarily the main focus is not the music. That's just adding to what's going on the screen. So recording studios are great for that. I mean, Back to the Future, the soundtrack was fantastic, and I don't think that making it live would have changed anything. I think it was just fine the way it was. Same with Star Wars, with Jaws, Indiana Jones. I just wonder, when the music is the main focus, having it in a recording studio is the best thing in all circumstances. I think there's some cases where it would be better done elsewhere or in other conditions.
What do you think about the type of instruments? Like first thing that comes to mind is that acoustic probably lends itself way better to vinyl than electronic music. I was mentioning before about the Pet Shop Boys. Well, the Pet Shop Boys are all about electronic music. That's the milieu in which they've been operating for a long, long time, even up until now. And they didn't have a choice. MP3s didn't exist back in the 80s. You had to go with vinyl. Although recently, it's because it's electronic music, who really cares if it's something, electronic music is not acoustic music. We know this.
Right. It was funny that another art form, I don't quite have an answer for that one, for the question, because I don't fully have an answer. I'm just noticing or wondering. I think that's where I'm putting on my thinking hat or cap. And if I was smoking, it would seem more appropriate, because that's usually what you're supposed to do when you have a pipe in your hand, is you just sit there, you puff, and then you say something that's supposed to sound profound. But one thing I also noted when I was growing up as a kid is the video game soundtracks really started to improve. I mean, you went from the really, I think his name is Koji Kondo, who did all the Nintendo things. He did a good job at the time, but then you had the Medal of Honor series. The Medal of Honor Frontline soundtrack is one of the best soundtracks ever made for a video game. And it was done in a recording studio, and it's absolutely beautiful. I was playing it in high school, and one of my teachers thought it was from a World War II film or something like that. So I'm not saying and that's getting back to my point, is I think that certain types of music is in its best version live or on vinyl. But I think also, if you wanted to release that Medal of Honor, because Medal of Honor takes the game soundtrack is for a game that takes place in World War II. If you really wanted to make it seem like it was authentic from the era, release it on a vinyl record. That would be, I think, more powerful. When you release something especially for music, when you release music in the form of which it was common during that era. So for 30s, 40s era stuff, you release it on a vinyl record. That's, I think, powerful, because it helps lend that authenticity. I don't know. I'm kind of rambling on this one, where I'm trying to explain, or perhaps rationalize, why people like certain types of formats. Like, why do people like vinyl? I understand there's a ritual, but then there's also the listening, the audio part. I think if you actually blindfolded people and played a vinyl record, MP3 CD, and a cassette tape, a lot of them would be able to tell a difference with the vinyl record.
Well, okay, so definitely I would say why people would enjoy vinyl is because those of us who remember playing records on vinyl, because that's all you had. But if you took your average teenager and say, here, this is a vinyl record, Number one, would they know what to do with it instead of throw it in the air like a frisbee? That's number one. Or number two is, here, why don't you go play this on something called a turntable? It turns it around. Yes, it is a physical device. And let me know how it sounds to you. They probably would say, oh, I don't know. It sounds kind of scratchy to me. Who would ever listen to this?
Yeah, you would also give them a phone, a mobile phone from the mid 2000s, and they wouldn't know what to, a flip phone. They wouldn't know what to do with it either. I'm saying that if they were forced, maybe, but the thing is, I think that I have no idea what young, and by young, I'm talking at early 20s, teens. I don't know what their mindset is, what the average collective mindset is for what they're doing. But I just wonder if they don't care because they don't see the value in it. Because there's a lot of things that I didn't care about that age. I'm being fair to them. I'm not just being one of those kids these days don't appreciate nothing type. the boomer mentality.
That's all right, TJ, if you feel that way. We're not going to judge you.
Guilty. No, I just don't, because I remember what my musical taste at that time was so different from what I was listening to, what I'm listening to now. It's night and day. Because when I was in high school, it was all the hip hop. That was it. There was nothing else being played, nothing else being talked about. It was all about pop, rap, hip hop, all that kind of stuff. I mean, you had Outkast and Usher and all that other stuff. So, but that I have no interest in that music now. In fact, I would turn it off. So for young people, I don't know if they're the best sample, not because they can't tell the difference, but because they just don't care. They wouldn't really understand or appreciate it. Almost like when I actually did not like beer when I was first trying it out. My friends had to pressure me or really like shame me into having a pint of beer.
Shame.
And it's an acquired taste.
Yeah, it's an acquired taste. And so now I can tell the difference between a porter, IPA. I can tell differences between different types of IPAs, Hefeweizens, stouts, lagers, all of the other, and I can tell if they're from Washington or not. So I wonder if for kids, I'm thinking of maybe somebody who's my age or somebody who's just gotten older and they're a little bit more.
You're so ancient.
Not ancient, but I'm just saying that they're past the point where they're past the age where not caring is the socially acceptable thing to do.
Well, once again, you're talking about a commitment. And there's a time commitment involved.
Not caring. I thought that was a hallmark of Generation X.
Well, and to be fair, I may be just the outlier of my generation. In a lot of ways, I am. I've got antique radios.
You think?
Thanks, Tim. Thanks.
The youngest guy who's trying to be the oldest guy.
Yeah, you're just old soul over here.
Mm-hmm.
Well, again, this is why all hit jobs that you guys try to do on millennials, including our friend Aaron, good friend, does not apply to me because I'm an outlier of my generation. I'm not the voice.
That's true.
At least you're more even keeled. He has seething contempt for the millennials.
Well, I do. I'm not going to make it. If I made money off of it, I would.
All right, so you guys in the chat, you need to make sure you start, throwing shekels because I want to see TJ become like, Aaron Jr. I want to see this seething contempt.
Yeah,
because you haven't let that loose yet.
No, I'm still waiting for it over here. I'm sitting on pins and needles for it.
Yeah, give me some of that Jameson IPA barreled aged whiskey, and I'll start ranting against my generation. See, you guys have it easy.
See, we've got this recorded now, TJ.
We're gonna put this on a loop. Just play it back.
So when we do the Village by the Sea, buddy, I expect seething, raging hatred and contempt, man, because I'm liquoring you up. I am liquoring you up, dude.
If you think the sermon "Sinners in the Hands of an Angry God" was bad, wait till I start talking about millennials.
I'm waiting for it, dude. I am holding you.
Hey, next podcast, TJ. Next podcast.
Yep.
If Jonathan Edwards were on the cusp of the millennials, what would he be?
He'd have probably started a a Protestant Inquisition. No, you go to most millennial people's houses, and what do they have? They have the 70-inch flat screen TV with built-in surround sound in their couches, so that you slightly levitate during the action scenes of a movie. On their Netflix accounts, where they also have it on Amazon Prime or whatever. I have
no. They've got the stencil on the wall that says, all you have to do is believe in yourself. That's what they fucking have.
Believe in yourself.
Yeah. And well, that, and then you go over to my house and I've got the 1990 Entertainment Center, the VCR, and the box TV.
And the turntable behind you that you
and a sign that says
and the manual typewriter.
Manual typewriter.
Yeah. So I think people accusing me of being a millennial
and a water heater from 1925.
Oh shit.
No, well, the house is actually turning a century old this year.
Oh,
Nice.
okay.
Yeah, the house is 100. Technically, the bedroom, because it used to be an orchard guy's house. This was an orchard field all around me. It still is in a lot of ways. But the bedroom was the original house. I've been doing some excavation, and then they built out, and then they added an addition to the build out, because the chimney for the stove is still in my room. It's just covered over with wood paneling. And so, yeah, it's really interesting that it's 100 years old this year. But for all intents and purposes, when the house assessor or whatever he's doing, property assessor was looking at the house, home inspector, he was looking around at it, and he's like, yeah, it's 100 years old technically, but in reality, it's upgraded to a certain date, but it's just the inside is 100 years old. So, but yeah, I just don't live the life of a typical millennial. That
I would agree. I would agree with that.
Yes, we know.
Yes.
We know, TJ. We know.
But does the audience know? See, that's
they do now.
Right. Well, that error, and we need to send a memo. We need to send a telegram if we have enough pennies.
No.
We need a fucking homing pigeon.
There you go.
TJ, you got your quill pen now.
That's true.
And your parchment.
Yes, I will send a letter.
Message in a bottle.
By dispatch to inform our good friend, the Earl of Clarey, that I am not a millennial.
I think he knows too. Otherwise, he wouldn't be on his podcast.
But Vince, I wanted to go back to your Looney Tunes cartoons thing. So that's also something, a gateway of how I got into classical music. Not that, I watched them all the time because they were in syndication way back in the late 70s and the early 80s. But you watch them enough times, and then the themes stick. And then when you actually come to listen to the actual piece, you're just like, I know that.
Yeah.
And then you find out what it is.
Yeah, you're seeing the Bugs Bunny and Elmer Fudd. Oh, Brunhilde, you're so lovely. Yeah, that entire thing is just amazing.
Well, and also it's funny you say that, Tim, because one of the oldest songs in English is Barbara Ellen, and I first heard that song it was the Daffy Duck episode where he's playing Robin Hood. That really famous cartoon where he's trying to convince Porky Pig, who's Friar Tuck, that he's Robin Hood. But the song it's playing at the very beginning, and I used to wonder, because if you watch for Christmas, like my family, the movie Scrooge, Ebenezer Scrooge or whatever it is, they sing that song in the movie, and I was like, oh, this is an
Christmas Carol.
Song. Yeah, Christmas Carol. And,
which one? The one with Albert Finney or?
The only one worth watching is
George C. Scott.
No, neither one of those is worth watching.
George C. Scott's amazing in that.
It's the 1951 version with Sinclair something, and I cannot remember his name, but it's called Scrooge.
Scrooge.
Yeah. So that's the best one in my opinion. The rest of them.
Nah, I think you're wrong.
It's kind of like I have a running joke with my cousin where he's convinced the best Treasure Island film adaptation was with Christian Bale and Charlton Heston. And I watched the film, and I agree that the production values for a TV show was fantastic, but in my opinion, the one with Robert Newton, the Disney version, is the best.
Yeah,
because nobody beats Robert Newton as a pirate. He is the definitive pirate of all pirates.
Yeah, I don't see Charlton Heston as a pirate.
No, not really. No,
No, you're watching. You're like, why is Ben-Hur wearing a patch?
I was just saying, Charlton Heston's a little more biblical.
Yeah, it's like,
Those damn dirty apes, Jim Boy.
you're watching. You're like, why is Moses killing everybody?
I thought that was God's job.
Wrath of an angry God. Yep.
Yep. And apparently Charlton Heston's.
Yeah. No. Oh, that's funny. So yeah, there's running arguments over the best Christmas Carol film. But anyways, you were going back to Looney Tunes, which is funny that they did that because they did the same thing in Die Hard, where they created as a Tim, you had a good term for it, where there's a certain musical piece that's played to associate with a idea or character or whatever.
A leitmotif.
Oh yeah, leitmotif. They did that with the vault in Die Hard with Beethoven's Ninth Symphony, because at the very beginning, because that initial scene when Hans Gruber is looking at the safe, in the very background you can hear it just very, very quietly. So building up to that, but what was interesting is when he did that, the director, there was people, the producers for the film said, you can't put Beethoven's Ninth Symphony in an action film. And he goes,
sure you can.
Yeah, you can. He goes, I'm gonna make everyone think of Christmas from now on over it, which is exactly what happened with. When I hear it, I'm thinking of them all breaking into the safe and pulling up the bearer bonds.
Yeah, well, in addition to Looney Tunes cartoons, how I got into classical music was there was a record series that came out in the early 80s. It was called Hooked On, fill in the blank. Hooked on classics, hooked on swing, hooked on jazz. And what it was is just taking some of the main themes from, like classics. I think that was the first album that came out in the series. And it just takes a lot of common themes across the whole gamut, more or less, and sped up in the orchestra. So it's not poppy or it's not jazzy. It's just at a faster speed. So you go through it more quickly, but still you listen to enough times and then the themes stick. When you listen to the original one, you're just like, oh yeah, I remember that. Yeah. And I listened to that all the time when I was like 9 or 10 years old.
Oh yeah, those associations are just amazing. Remind us of our youth. It's amazing. It's interesting how the music is associated with so many fond memories.
Yeah. And about the cartoons, it's always struck me because I never really paid that much attention to it when I was a kid watching them for the first time. And by that time, they were already, fairly old, 40 years or so. And even some of the Disney cartoons stretch back to the 30s, too.
That's true.
But the introduction of classical music, it's just I guess that's more of a reflection of the tastes of the people watching them. Is that you can insert them into a cartoon, and it was probably not that uncommon for your average person to have a couple of classical music records lying around.
And not only that, they're royalty free.
Yeah.
So there's that aspect of it. Was everybody on mute? What the hell?
Nope, we're all here.
All right.
But how at the same time, as far as associations, this is why you should not watch A Clockwork Orange, or you will never listen to I'm Singing in the Rain ever again.
Yeah.
You will feel very uncomfortable. Not that I've ever really watched the musical, but you will never watch it the same again. So this is how songs get butchered, or at least your memory of it gets butchered.
Yeah, there's certain things you should not see. Really.
Kind of reminds me of Reservoir Dogs with Stuck in the Middle with You.
All right, see, there you go. Rob threw in a little lyric.
Yeah, so sing, TJ. I'm still waiting.
I hope you got time.
Jesus.
I got all night.
So TJ, what are your best songs for karaoke whenever you do it?
Yes.
Okay, this is totally off topic, but it just came to mind. Since we're talking about songs that we associate with whatever. AC/DC's Shoot to Thrill I considered the definitive American song, and then I discovered that they were Australian, and I was brokenhearted.
They ruined it for you.
I mean, I would listen, because what do I associate that with now? Is Iron Man, right? Like,
yeah.
He's especially after that scene in the Avengers film, the original one, where they're in Germany and there's Loki, and he's whatever fighting, and then suddenly he just blasts this song on the speakers and shows up and has it's just associated with Iron Man. But Iron Man is almost like Superman in that he's a definitively American character, in my opinion. He's like a modern Howard Hughes, like hyperactive Howard Hughes. You know, take all the strengths and flaws of Howard Hughes and amplify them.
Is more of a social Howard Hughes.
Yeah. So if I want to, exactly. He's not hiding away in a hotel for 20 years watching Ice Station Zebra
and urinating into milk bottles.
and he keeps his nails trimmed.
Yes.
Oh, which is funny. Speaking of that was that film, The Aviator, had a lot of Benny Goodman songs that
That's true.
At least one of them.
Good film.
Playing. Yeah, sure. There's, and then it ends on Moonlight Serenade at the very end of the film.
Yeah, you're right.
Creepy. Yeah, that actually, I was creeped out listening to that song after that point, because the film, The Aviator, ends on such a eerie note and a disturbing note.
The way of the future. The way of the future. Yeah.
The way of the future. And then it's just like, dun, 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 and it's like, I can never listen to this song the same again. I'm never listening to this song in the dark, because I'm going to expect these guys in white coats to suddenly start coming towards me like he did.
Yeah, seriously.
Thinking of having music as a soundtrack to video games, you mentioning The Aviator, it reminds me of two different video games that I played a few years back that the soundtracks either were, the perfect example for me is Grand Theft Auto Vice City. Okay. And when you would take a car or any kind of vehicle, you would have the radio stations you could tune into while you were driving around committing your mayhem.
Really?
Oh yeah. Huh. And the soundtrack was phenomenal. The different, you'd have the DJ break in and talk about the weather or whatever. And there'd be times that when I would play that game, I would just drive around just so I could listen to the music instead of actually engaging in the game, doing the missions or doing whatever mayhem needed to be done. But the other one that when he was mentioning Moonlight Serenade, that is eerie as fuck to me, was listening to Moonlight Sonata on Resident Evil. That playing that video game in a dark basement.
Isn't that Debussy? Moonlight Sonata?
No, it's Beethoven.
No, it was Beethoven.
Okay.
But there's a few segments in the game where they would play different musical pieces, but there was a segment where it was Moonlight Sonata, which is a beautifully haunting piece of music. But
not in a dank basement.
No, not in a dank basement. Not when you're being hunted by zombies and other sorts of creepy crawlies. And, and I'm playing it as a younger guy, probably late teenager, early 20s. And so I'm sitting in front of the television and I've got the headphones on so I'm not waking the family up. And, playing this game where you're just pins and needles anyway. And then Moonlight Sonata comes on and it's like, are you fucking kidding me? But I understand what TJ's talking about there, because that totally just brought back Moonlight Sonata for me. That when I hear it, and it's it's obviously a popular tune. It's in different movies. It's different parts of different soundtracks. But for me, that's where it's, I guess, got burned and etched into my brain. Is I start wanting to look over my shoulder, thinking, okay, is there a zombie coming up behind me right about now? you know, because it's Resident Evil. So
No, it's just a millennial coming up to you.
that's right. And then instead of, you know, with their arms outstretched, you know, brains, it's, you know, they got their phone in their hand, Instagram. So
PBR.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Well, it's the same thing with why I'll never watch or listen to We Will Meet Again, like the song that was played at the end of the Doctor Strangelove, which if you haven't seen that movie by the age of 40, something wrong with you.
TJ, did Aaron see it yet? I think
he did.
I bought the damn thing for him. You need to watch that shit.
He watched it and
he was underwhelmed.
No, he was actually angry that he lost 2 hours of his life.
Oh, so he texted you as well?
Oh yeah, he's like he was like I think he used like 4 or 5 exclamation points somewhere. There's a teenage girl missing her exclamation points. It was like he was completely angered.
Well, the first question I asked was, "Are you sober?"
How could you not like, gentlemen? You can't fight in here. This is the war room.
Yeah.
Right, exactly right.
Yeah.
But there's that song that plays at the end while the bombs are going off. I can't listen to that song because I just associate it with a worst case scenario, nightmare, apocalyptic scenario that I didn't live through, but I'm having talked to so many people who went through it and looking at all the stuff that was going on at the time. I can see how that was a legitimate fear people had. And so for it to play this very uplifting song in such a, it's as the same thing with Fallout playing these 30s and 40s music, where it feels creepy to be playing such uplifting music in an apocalyptic scenario. And the same thing with the Clockwork Orange and doing Singing in the Rain and all that stuff, where there's something very weird and we suddenly don't want to associate. We don't even want to think about it. Once it's become associated with something, it feels weird, feels creepy. But another group of that I did not mention in the 30s was, and they were really in the 40s. They were associated with Abbott and Costello. Was the Andrews Sisters. So they did what is the name of the song? I have it. Serenade.
Boogie Bugle Boy.
That, but they also did Aurora. They also did a serenade. Was it? It wasn't Moonlight Serenade. It was. I'm gonna look this up. Give me a second. This bothers me that I can't.
He's going to his phone.
I'm not going to my phone. I'm going to the interwebsies. Andrew Sisters. Sleepy Serenade. That's it. It was in Follow That Ghost or Hold That Ghost. Have you ever watched that film? So they play the Serenade at the beginning, and then I think they do Aurora at the end. But that's a great film as well to watch, where Abbott and Costello films in a lot of ways were just opportunities to have performers like the Andrews Sisters in, followed by a bunch of slapstick comedy. If you watch Hit the Ice, which was another good Abbott and Costello film, there's a lot of performances by musicians that were popular at the time, like Johnny Long and his orchestra, who were also pretty good. The girl who was singing in it the songs weren't the greatest. She was okay, but Johnny Long was also a famous big band guy at the time. So another example. But I listen to them, the Andrews Sisters, occasionally when you got to just unwind and you're reading a book or something like that.
Fair enough. All right, we're coming up on close to the 2-hour mark. Rob, you want to give your spiel? It's been assigned to your assignment for each episode.
Well, yeah, I've been noticing because I've been watching the chat and I've got the video kind of pulled up to keep an eye on things, and I'm seeing at least right now this moment there's 14 people watching, and yet we only have 9 likes. Guys, come on, like the video. Come on, you're slacking out there. So anyway, in all seriousness, guys, if you haven't subscribed, hit the subscribe button. Hit the like button, share the video with anyone you think that would benefit from it. That's my my assignment, as Vince says. That's my PSA for the. We should have done this like a half hour, 40 minutes ago.
I was
Vince.
thinking that, yeah, when we first started, like the hour. I dropped the ball on that one.
You did, and where's your fucking coffee while you're at it? You know.
I know. Well, you gotta give it a break every fucking. That's true. I do have a fucking coffee mug. I'll have that for next episode. Don't worry.
Okay. All right.
And also, we need to let everyone know that we do have a newsletter, which hits if you sign up, it will hit your inbox every Monday faithfully. So when you get up in the morning, whether you have off or you're going to work or you're at work, and no one goes to work and does work the first 15 minutes. Nobody does. They check their email. So
first hour.
Well, fair enough. Yeah, that's true. So anywhere between 15 minutes and an hour, you're checking your email. You're doing some minor housekeeping, email-wise. Check out and read the Masculine Geek newsletter. This is unique in the fact that every Monday you'll get something from Rob, TJ, and myself on various topics. It'll be fun. It'll be interesting, and you won't regret it. Sign up. Go to masculinegeek.com. Top right-hand side, you'll see the little text box where you put in your email, and it's easy. We don't spam you. We hate spam. You'll never get solicitations. We don't sell your email to anybody. You just get Masculine Geek goodness every Monday. Do it. That's my spiel. There you go. All right.
Game on.
And that's the gift that keeps on giving.
Well, actually, after I stopped, you guys were so silent and not moving. It looked like my screen had frozen. So I that's why I withdrew. I kind of like did the turtleneck back. Like, wait, what? Oh, okay. But anyway, so yeah, go sign up for Masculine Geek every Monday. You'll love it. And if we do any special events and maybe other broadcasts that we may in the future hold on different days, we'll let you know, and any special updates. But for the most part,
any special guests, hint, hint, wink, wink.
We will. Yes, we will have a special guest on. I forget what episode it will be, but it will be on April 3rd, Wednesday, April 3rd. So mark your calendars now. I'm not going to go ahead and create the event yet. That'll be a week before. But as we get closer to that, I would say maybe a week out, we'll start promoting. As we do with other special guests, we'll start promoting about a week before. But this one's going to be interesting and probably a bit of an eye opener. So, yes. All right. So, Tim, did you have anything else you wanted to share?
Yeah, so I don't have a web presence, but I am becoming a repeat guest on another podcast called Mindgasms. So if you just go into the YouTube search and type in Mindgasms, it is hosted by a guy named Andrew, and I am becoming a regular guest. So upcoming, I believe it's this week, we're going to be diving into our mini-series on postmodernism.
Oh, okay. I'll have to check that out. Very cool. It's just you, both you two?
Well, we have another guy too, Shane, who, and our series is going to be a lead into, this is postmodernism itself, and then we're going to do a lead into postmodern theology, which he has more of an interest in, Shane.
Gotcha. Oh, okay. I have a question for you, Tim. Do you do voice work?
No, I don't.
You should.
Why do I have a voice?
You have a radio presence. Absolutely.
Radio presence. Yes. Well, yeah. I've been kicking around the idea to do a podcast, but I don't know.
I keep telling him to do it.
You absolutely should. You've got a great voice for it.
Well, TJ, you're supposed to have me on again on your podcast. What's the deal here? I mean, you got your bullpen now.
I ain't no millennial. I don't know nothing about them there.
I can't get the sound to work. I don't know what's going on.
The vinyl won't connect. I don't know.
Well, we had a hell of a time getting you to do video for Masculine Geek.
Oh, really? Wow! Was it like pulling teeth and then some for them?
It was like it was an act of Congress.
Well, I'll tell you, it was one of those that this guy's not a fucking geek. He doesn't even know how to hook up a webcam. He's like, I don't know what I'm hiding over here in the occupied zone. I can't show my face. I don't know what you're talking about.
Somebody's got to do a hand cam like they did back in the 20s. They got to be in the room with me. I can't find anybody.
It's just TJ.
This is what Aaron. It would be like if there was 3 Aarons in the room.
You're getting put on the spot, yes. But now you get to see TJ in his war room. So there you go.
Where I plot the I have no idea what I'm plotting right now.
The takeover of the occupied zone.
Yeah, we're retaking.
You're reclaiming it.
Right?
Reclaiming it.
We are reclaiming territory that was once reserved for masculine men and has been told that it's now occupied by unmasculine men only, and we are leading a full frontal charge into that territory and swarming it over like Patton and the Third Army in France in 1944. So this is what this podcast is about. We are reclaiming interests and hobbies and passions that we've been told are off limits for men such as ourselves, and we're saying, no, we're going to have something to say about that.
Yes.
Pretty much my thoughts on the matter.
Good thoughts. Sorry,
I think we lost Tim.
Yeah, looks like we did.
What the fuck?
Press F to pay respects.
Yeah.
I don't fully understand that saying. I just see it everywhere when someone's Twitter account gets deleted or removed because of the social justice warriors there. People just say press F to pay respects. Oh.
Yeah. Or, to get 90s on you, pour out a little liquor for the homie.
Yeah.
I haven't heard that in a while.
Isn't that from Reservoir Dogs?
No, I don't remember seeing it in Reservoir Dogs. It was in...
he pours the drink and then just tosses it over the side. I know they do that in the miniseries Pacific.
Well, I know they did it in the movie Boys in the Hood. When they were talking about their dead homies, they were drinking out of their fucking 40s, and they ended up pouring out a little liquor for their their long dead homies. But I'm not sure what definitely wasn't Reservoir Dogs.
Okay, I haven't seen that full film. I just watched parts of it in high school.
Jeez, high school.
I was told Boondock Saints was better, so I popped.
Boondock Saints is fantastic.
Yeah. Well.
You look scary, Rock. You look like Mushmouth from that movie is just amazing.
Oh, there's so many. We could kill everyone.
I'm the guy. I know everyone. We could kill everyone. I'm strangely okay with this.
I'm strangely comfortable with it.
I'm assuming, Rob, from your tolerant silence and your smile, that you haven't seen that movie.
I can actually say I'm probably the only guy who has not seen that movie.
I'm going to buy that and send it to you.
All right. So make sure it's on Blu-ray.
All right. I still use Blu-ray. I love it.
Is that sort of like being over the age of 40 and not seeing Dr. Strangelove?
Pretty much, yeah. So now we can bust on Rob.
Yeah, we're gonna give Rob a hard time. Not as much as other people's who we won't mention.
Yes,
even though we've already mentioned it.
Well, at least
multiple times.
Yeah, Rob will view it joyously and enjoy it.
He also won't make fun of us or give us crap at 2 a.m. in the morning when he watches it.
Oh no, you don't know me yet.
He will. Rob will. You fucker.
And if it ends up being a film I don't like, you will hear about it. I will be like, okay, you guys are no longer allowed to recommend movies.
Yeah, but
because I've had people do that to me. Well, like, you need to see this.
I gave you good book recommendations, so the movies will stand firm.
Yeah, but I'll take you for now. But books is a whole nother fucking topic. Movies is something else. And so for me, I'm willing to watch it, but at the same time, if it's shit to me, I'll tell you, dude, you're off my recommend list.
Every masculine geek, every guy should watch this movie.
The other thing is, if you don't like it, we can have a debate on Masculine Geek for an episode.
Nice. All right.
Yeah. Everything is open for topics or content.
I'm down for debates. Debates are one of my things. I'm getting a little long in the tooth. I need to sharpen them up. So I'm good with that. But, like I said, I've heard about the movie. I think I caught 5 minutes of it at a party once when we were just whacked out of our minds, just wrecked on all kinds of substances, and at least from what I saw, I was too busy having conversations with other people that I couldn't get into it because, again, being, you know, in an inebriated state.
Those people didn't exist that you were having a conversation with.
Well, they might have. Then again, maybe not. But either way, you know, it was one of those. That's an episode we can do. Is talking about altered states. I can tell you about mushrooms. That's a good time there. But the little bit I did catch of the movie, at least, like I said, it was one of those. I caught like 10 minutes, and everybody was whacked out of their minds, and the host played the movie for I don't know how long, but then he flipped it over to Deadpool, and then we're into that 15 minutes, and then he flips it to something else. And I'm just like, dude, fucking stick with something. You know, I don't care what it is, but just stick with something.
You'll never, ever clean your guns again with your cat in the room.
Yes. Yeah, I forgot about that.
I can't believe that just happened.
Boom! It just started. You don't expect it. It completely startles you. You have to watch it just for that.
Right.
So, all right. So we're coming up on the 2-hour mark. We're 7 minutes away. We're going to go ahead and call this a night. Everyone in the chat, we got. Oh, hey Tony! Thanks for joining us.
Up.
Yeah. Right when we're ready to leave, you have to go back and watch. If you just.
No, I think he has. From what it seems here, I think he's just finally just piping up.
Okay, just been sandbagging. Okay, that's cool.
Yeah, he's been doing shit.
All right, cool. Thanks for watching, everyone in the chat. Thank you for watching. Everyone who's viewed, thank you for watching. We appreciate.
And for all you who liked the video after I asked or said or whatever, guilted you into it, whatever you want to call it.
Yes.
Thank you for liking. For those that haven't liked it, please do subscribe to the channel. Remember, we are on at 9 o'clock Eastern Standard Time every Wednesday. Hit the notification button so that you know when we're coming on. We do have, like Vince hinted at a little bit earlier, we've got a pretty big name guest coming up here in the next couple of weeks. So you'll want to tune in for that because it's going to be a good show.
April 3rd.
April 3rd. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Just hit subscribe, hit the like button, share with anyone you think that would get a kick out of it or would benefit from it.
And hit the bell.
Yeah, hit the bell, the notification. And yeah, that's about all I got to say about that.
All right. You sound like
Forrest Gump.
Forrest Gump. Yeah.
All I got to say about
that. You want to go ahead and plug anything that you're doing?
Oh, I'm still doing the same old. You can find me at robsays.net. You'll find I usually release at least one blog post a week, sometimes more, depending on my mood. Same with my YouTube channel. If you go to the About page or the Contact page, you'll find where you can subscribe to my channel if you're interested in what I've got to offer. Same with my Anchor.fm if you want to listen to my podcasts that I release every Thursday. You can go to robsays.net, download it there, listen to it while you're working, doing whatever, so you don't have to be sitting in front of your computer or your screen or whatever. So that's me for right now.
Nice. TJ?
All right. If you want to read some of my work, you can go to tjmartinell.com. I have links to all my books on the left-hand side. Particularly if you're interested in the whole fake news thing, I have a novel called The Stringers, and a sequel and prequel. Buy those. I need enough copies being sold so that I'm motivated to actually finish the third book in the series.
Oh, so it's a bribe.
Yes, it is a bribe. It's all a bribe.
No, it's not a bribe. He's just kind of begging and pleading. That's all.
Buy my stuff.
Please. I want to finish my book.
Buy me a cup of coffee.
Sure, it's a bribe. You're paying us to not do our jobs.
There you go.
Oh, hey, that reminds me too, guys. I'm going to plug TJ here for just a second. You need to check out his Mountain Pass podcast. Check out episode 35, 36, where you're talking about your test.
Yeah. I have
to check that out.
Yeah, so I do a weekly podcast called the Mountain Pass Podcast because I live unto the mountain. And I did a recent episode on, I guess I would call it the Voight comp test for determining people's whether people's perception of reality as they see it is actually true. So you ask them questions that's intended to gauge their emotional response to it. So, for example, if someone says that you are a hindrance or cause them problems in their life, and you suggest avoiding them, and they immediately react badly, you know they're lying because they obviously want you around their life. You're a plus to their life, so they failed the test.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, you guys, you need to check this out because I listened to it today when I was at work, and what TJ was talking about, I'm sitting there going, oh my God, he just fucking described my ex-wife almost to a T. I'm just like, holy shit, wow.
Fuck.
So you got to check this out.
I'll be elaborating a little bit on that test, different questions that you can ask people. And so that's what I talk about in my podcast. I talk about living in the mountains, but not out in a hut. I'm not going to go write a manifesto or anything like that next. But yeah, just discussing philosophical stuff, but also just the rural life out in the free, safe zone of Washington State, not on the occupied zone that is
firmly ensconced in your war room.
Yeah, exactly. From the war room.
Live from the war room.
Which, by the way, if you listen to my podcast, this is germane to our week's episode. So in the original recordings of Benny Goodman's radio show, it would start out with them saying, this is Benny Goodman coming to you from the Manhattan room of the Hotel Pennsylvania in New York City. That building, that hotel no longer exists. So when I start out my episode saying I'm coming to you from the war room of my fortress in the heart of Cascadia, that's where I developed.
Okay.
And then they would say signing off at the end. And so I was trying to come up with a clever catchphrase to introduce my podcast. And I thought, I love listening to Benny Goodman's old radio shows. So that would be one way to do it.
Cool. I like it.
So yeah.
We'll have to sign off like that too. We'll let you do that. And you can find me at Masculine Geek or VinceLaRosa.com. Finishing up some various writing projects, but we do have something cool for Masculine Geek. We'll have artwork done for our header and various other sundry objects not too long from now. So keep an eye on the website. You'll see some different art and interesting things coming up. So that's it for now. Stay tuned. Sign up for the newsletter. You can stay in contact with us that way. Read some good content. And next Wednesday, same time, 9 p.m. Eastern Time. All right, everyone, have a good night. Thank you for watching.
All right.
And
signing off.